Tupperware, like I said, probably going to stick around for a while, but at some point, Tupperware may turn into the dog dish. You probably don't want to make food in that that you're going to serve your coworkers, or maybe you do. I'm not going to judge. Welcome to Garage Sales Unhinged.
Where the characters are as quirky as the finds.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Jake.
Join us as we dive into the wild world of garage sales, yard sales, estate sales, and anywhere secondhand sales are happening.
From bizarre bargains to hilarious haggles.
You won't believe the stories we've got lined up.
Let's get unhinged.
Jacob, I'm going to pull some resources from the website Garage Sales Supply. They're one of our sponsors of the podcast.
Okay.
And they have good guides and resources for people that want to run their own sale. So, let's say that you are going to host a yard sale. You have a nice yard. You have some nice stuff. People would probably want to buy it. But do you know what kind of items would actually draw in the people to your sale?
No, I know what I would hope they would just take off my hands, but
Which
as far
is,
as- what?
what do you want them to hope they take off your hands?
Well, I don't know. I mean, stuff that's just in the way, got no use for it, been meaning to do something with that or donate it somewhere.
I'm
You
your
know,
sister. Don't talk about me like that.
but no, as far as like that is kind of tough because you're wanting to set up a garage sale. You don't see enough value in these things to hang on to them. So it's really hard to look at it and go, other people will see value in this thing. So no, I guess the answer there is like, no, I just know I want someone else to, I want this to be someone else's problem.
That's how you should frame your sale. Let this be your problem.
Yeah.
Bargain today. Um,
Pay me for these problems.
so GarageSaleSupply.com, they have a guide called 10 Unexpected Items That Sell Like Hotcakes at Garage Sales. So,
Are the items hotcakes?
no,
Okay.
I know. I know. Such a
Disappointing.
letdown. Such a letdown. But if you had hotcake smell wafting through your neighborhood, then we're gonna pull the Annie Ann's thing and like, hey,
Oh,
follow
that's
the
great.
smell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but some of these items, especially whenever you go to promote your sale, definitely lead the promotion write up with these items. So there's 10 of them.
Okay.
Buckle in, get ready. Number one, vintage board games. And vintage board games maybe now that we are more mature people, take what does vintage mean? So it's going to be games from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Oh, that hurts.
I know. I know. Um, but anything like the original Monopoly set, which we had as kids, the classic Clue, which we had as kids, and their first edition Trivial Pursuit are three board games, I know, which we had as kids, are actually the three vintage board games that are highly sought after.
So any games with just delicious looking pieces, you can't urge to cram them down your throat and let them sit there. It,
If you were a kid and you shoved a playing piece up your nose, it is now vintage and sought after.
the Trivial Pursuit board game had pieces that were called pies. What
So
did they expect?
I don't know if anyone else's family was like this, but a Trivial Pursuit was actually created in Canada, and the blue column was about politics. And in our family, if you ever got a blue question that was about Canadian politics, you could skip it and go to the next card because it was always like, who was the Canadian prime minister in 1943? And you're like, skip.
Right. Yeah. With all due respect and love to our Canadian friends and now, family members, but yeah, at the time it was just no, that these don't count. It's not a real place. It's not real. It's not real. Fucking World Wallet.
What's a prime minister? Oh, kid,
Right.
we're not talking about that. Go to the next card.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
so vintage board games. I guess that's because they're why? Like they're cool. They have like really neat retro graphics and fonts and stuff like that. So people are buying those things, and odds are, if they're very old, some pieces are missing. But maybe the point isn't to actually play the game, it's just to have it displayed because they're art pieces in a lot of ways.
They are. Also, it's a collector's item. So similarly as someone, getting a collector's item of a baseball card, you're
Mhm.
not gonna swap it with your friend. A lot of times people buy stuff because they enjoy it. It brings memories to them, sentimental value to them. Or like, let's say you don't even have the full set. Someone's gonna buy it and going, I've been missing these 3 pieces and I need it for my collection. Um, so, I mean, don't I mean, that could probably be a whole other episode of the psychology of a collector, but, yeah, apparently vintage board games are a huge draw for people that want to buy things at secondhand sales.
What else you got?
All right, second one, you and I've talked about it on other episodes before, but old tools.
Old tool.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So, any well-known brands like Stanley and Craftsman work really well, but tools are something that you can restore them pretty easily. You can sharpen them. You can actually people out there will actually they can sharpen them for you. They can take the rough stuff for you. But like a shovel is a shovel is a shovel. A hammer still going to hammer stuff. So especially estate sales, people that may be downsizing or um like my husband and I had a fully furnished house. He had a fully furnished house, and whenever we combined houses, we had way too much crap. And so you just sell extra things that you don't need, and tools is a great way to buy something cheap that is usable right out of the gate, and also declutters your house. But old tools are a hot ticket item.
I like the scene of, partners coming together. We're bringing our houses together and we're making adult choices here. And we have way too many tools and we need to figure out which ones stay and which ones go. And it's a very fraught, emotional process. We love each other, damn it. It can't always be hammer time. And so one of the hammers must go.
Are you planning a garage sale, yard sale, or estate sale and need some help? Look no further than Garage Sale Supply. They provide top notch resources and expert advice to help you host the perfect sale. From pricing tips to promotional strategies, they've got you covered. Visit garagesalesupply.com and make your next sale a success. So, okay, side quest story. Um, as we were moving so my husband and I, we got engaged. I sold my house, moved in with him. We got married, and then a year after we got married, we were going to move into a house that we had bought together and going to build this new life together in our new house and all that stuff. So, my husband was traveling for work, and I had to go through the guest closets to clear stuff out, know what we needed to get the movers to move, all that stuff. And I found a box
Oh
of
no.
memorabilia.
Let's edit this out.
No, 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 it's not bad.
Okay.
Found a box of memorabilia from my husband's ex-girlfriends, gifts that they had given him over the years. And some of them, and of course, I called up our cousin and said, "Hey, come over. I'm drinking wine. We're gonna go through this box
Oh
together."
no.
And at the time, my cousin worked with my husband. So it was a great night for us. And of course, I'm texting him throughout the night. He's like, "Why are you going through my stuff?" And I was like, "We're married. It is now our stuff." By the way, this is hilarious. So um, my husband's a saint for putting up with me. But I say all this stuff and talking about appliances because everything that these lovely ladies had given him, I trashed. Like it was letters, it was birthday
Oh,
cards, all
well,
that.
good. Sure.
Um, threw it away. Like, oh, it's a nice sentiment. And I did ask him, like, hey, do you want to keep this stuff or can I throw it? And he's like, I haven't looked at it in years. You can throw it away. Great, I did that, except for one item. And I wanted to write a letter to the lady to thank her for giving him the item. And it was a waffle iron. I have always wanted a waffle iron, and I found this one in this box of ex-girlfriend memorabilia, and I was like, "Why do you have a waffle iron in here?" And he told me the whole story that she had, like, gifted him this waffle irons because they could, make waffles together and all this stuff, and I was like he's like, "You can get rid of it." I was like, "Absolutely not. We're keeping this." And to this day, we still have it. We also have, like, 3 blenders. Like, there's we didn't get rid of everything, but I have that waffle iron, and to that lady, thank you very much. It is delicious.
I like well, I mean, good for Doug for, staying, like, on task. I mean, he's, like, going through his stuff and going, "Ah, these things all have this sort of baggage." I think a lesser man would easily just look at the waffle iron and not assign it any sort of emotional value whatsoever, and just but into the box it went with all of these other, like, really fraught emotional things and waffle iron.
Okay, first of all, he had no emotion tied to any of these things, and it's more of a hoarder pack rat situation than,
Ah,
like, sentimental value.
got it.
A lot of these items were he had been in this box for several years, so whenever he moved from an apartment into the house that he had purchased, they just stayed in the box as things tend to do. Um, so yeah, he forgot about it, which is why what was in this box. I was like, "Oh, no, well, I'm washing this thing up. We're having waffles tomorrow." So,
So
we
I'm guessing, like, I'd lump a waffle iron in among tools, you know? I mean, a hammer will continue to hammer and the waffle iron as long as the wiring's good, right?
well, this actually goes to the next thing on the list, and it's, actually vintage kitchenware
Hmm.
is a hot ticket item. So and it may not be a waffle iron, but if it is, friends, I'm not joking. Get you a waffle iron for the house. Like you can have House and turn it into a waffle home in your
Mm.
PJs. It is good. So vintage kitchenware, and this is true because whenever I've gone estate sale shopping, garage sale shopping with mom, we look for these things. Pyrex dishes, man, those things can weather a nuclear storm. Like get that, especially the ones with vintage patterns. Old cast iron skillets, you can scrub those things up, you can season them, they work great.
You can erase all the evidence of past crimes.
I mean, fair, yes, you
Yeah.
can. Mid-century modern kitchen gadgets are also highly desirable. So, also, it's funny, Jake and I went out to, Canton First Trade Days several moons ago. Man, it was a long time ago now.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you're not familiar, dear listener, Canton, Texas, small town, east-ish Texas, and really all it's really known for is something they called trade days. Essentially, it's like one of the biggest secondhand flea market swap sale places you could ever find. It's acres and acres of all sorts of crazy stuff. That's what Canton is. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to explain what that was.
and no, I'm glad you set the scene. So whenever we first walked into the Trade Days, I'm gonna say fairgrounds because it's a massive compound.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first thing I saw and I kind of was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they have that here."
It was a carving. It was a piece of
Nope.
art, wasn't it? No? What was it?
It was more mundane than that.
Was it
Tupperware.
a scooter?
It was Tupperware.
Oh. Oh, yes, it was. Yeah, yeah. You made a big deal out of that.
Yeah.
Why?
So, so again, whenever you think about vintage kitchenware, the mint condition, vintage Tupperware and old cookie jars, because people are looking for nostalgia pieces, and those are things that sell really well. Tupperware, again, gonna withstand a nuclear storm. I don't know why, but they do. But also, like, whenever I saw that booth at Canton Trade Days, it reminded me of every single, broccoli and rice casserole that our aunt had made. It reminded me of different meals that we had had as a family at our grandmother's. So, like, you think of anything that's nostalgia base from a kitchen, people tend to wanna buy those.
So that seems to be well, that's like a theme among the options, the items, listed so far. Uh, there's the retro, uh, thing. There's a little more there's a unique art design
Mhm.
aesthetic to these things, but also say, like, with tools and with these kitchen items, they're just made better. And I find it really interesting you bring up the topic of nostalgia because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as time goes on, what is considered nostalgic, what can have nostalgic value changes. Like the window moves up with time. So at some point, things from the 60s and 70s and 80s aren't nostalgic because we will be here. Some other generation will be here, and that'll just be something that I guess my grandparents had. I've got no nostalgic value to it. For me, it's the stuff that was around in the 2000s.
But I think at some point those become, because there's less and less of them that still exist,
Yeah,
and they become like, "Oh, I have that one of 5 that are left," right?
right.
Tupperware, like I said, probably gonna stick around for a while, but at some point, Tupperware may turn into the dog dish. You probably don't wanna make food in that, that you're gonna serve your coworkers, or maybe you do. I'm not gonna judge. Um, Also something that we explored at Canton Trade Days, and you bought this there, vinyl records.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with vinyl records. The vinyl record doesn't have to be in pristine playing condition. Sometimes collectors buy them because of the artwork. So vinyl records has kind of like this two pieces of use. One, if you still want to listen to the music and you have a vinyl record player, you can listen to that. But also if you want to display these records, like there's some really cool artwork out there and
Mhm.
you use it as an art piece. So vinyl records, huge item to sell at your own secondhand sale.
Mm, I kinda like that. It's yeah, it is kind of a dual purpose. You can listen to it, or the sleeve art is just kinda cool on its own. But honestly, like, even modern vinyl, is being printed in ways that the record itself is a piece of art,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of a cool thing. Okay, so and yeah, and if you ever do get out to Canton, if any listeners are going to head out there, look around for the folks that have the vinyl collections. You have some serious record heads out there that have crazy collections, offering things that you'd be shocked that are being offered that are in great condition. It's a cool place to be.
Also, you can teach the youngins about side A and side B.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you
you
don't
know,
have to do that with your streaming devices these days.
yeah, you punks, you got it so easy. We used to have to you had to put the tape over the top of the blank cassettes before you could record the song on something we called a radio.
I remember I had a vinyl record player growing up, and, like, you could switch it between the different speeds depending on the size of the
Yeah.
record, but sometimes, like, putting it on the different speed and, like, I mean, we were kids, innocent children, had good childhoods, but I'm like, "Is this what drugs do to you?" It was so slow, and, I was like, "This is what drugs do. Are we cool now?"
Do I need to go to jail now? I listened to yours. Oh, no. When I think of vinyl records, like an early experience that comes to mind is, McDonald's. I mean, tell me I'm not imagining this. They had a promo at some point that, you'd buy some item and it would come with a small, like, 5-inch vinyl record or 7-inch vinyl record. And you'd go home and you'd play it, and if it played this particular song, you were the winner for some crazy sweepstakes, whatever thing.
Yeah.
You remember
So,
that?
I don't remember it, but I just pulled it up. Apparently, it was a $1988 million menu song record.
Yes. And you'd go home and you'd put the vinyl on, and it would be a chorus of people that were attempting to sing the Big Mac song. You ready? "Two all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, on a sesame seed bun." Um Catchy, right? That was it. But they sing really fast, and it had big, big band music behind them. But of course you didn't win. Of course you did not win. You'd go home and you play the record, and they'd get halfway through the song and stumble over it the way I did, and they go, "Oh," and then the announcer would say, "Sorry, this is not a winning record, but keep eating our horrible food." And we did.
So, also, like, if you play it backwards, what does it tell you to do?
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Enjoy a double Big Mac and kill your parents.
All right. Okay, so we've gone over 4 items: vintage board games, old tools, vintage kitchenware, and vinyl records. Number 5 on the list, vintage cameras. So if you have anything from a well-known brand like Kodiak, Polaroid, Leica, they actually hold their value pretty well, so you can, uh, get top dollar for it in a lot of, situations. So, and again, people that are into photography, they're looking for those things, and they're looking for a bargain because honestly, like, if I was selling an old Polaroid, I wouldn't know what to I was like, "Oh, here, $5." And someone who's really into photography is going, "Oh my gosh, that's a $60 item and I
Yeah.
can get it." Because the other thing is with these photography enthusiasts, they probably also develop their own film. So, they wanna use those things, and that's becoming a huge hobby for a lot of people is to get these old cameras, develop their own film, and enjoy the heck out of it. It's also, strange enough, decor.
Well, yeah.
People that aren't even photographers, they like to have the old cameras sitting on a shelf as just house decor. All right, number 6 on the list is retro video games and consoles.
Totally. Yes.
So, earlier we were talking about vintage board games, and you're like, "Who would wanna buy that?" And I'm sure someone who collects vintage board games like, "Who would wanna buy retro video games and consoles?" Well, there you go. You just met your other part, and it's Jake.
But yeah, I figure for the same reasons. So a lot of media is strictly digital, and I think a lot of people find real charm and value in having physical media for a lot of different reasons. One, there's like a different fidelity experience. Like it things sound different and in many cases better on vinyl as opposed to streaming. But there's other reasons involved, kind of manufactured scarcity. I bought this damn movie on streaming Amazon and now it's no longer available, or it's just not available to anybody. It's been erased from memory because it's a tax break. But if you own the DVD or the game cartridge, you've got it and you're not going to lose it due to the, business environment changing for some giant company. I totally get it, and on top of that, a lot of those retro, uh, consoles, again, their designs, their aesthetics are from a bygone era, and that's what gives them charm.
Also, I feel like children today have no concept of blowing on the video game cartridge. Yeah, you don't even know the amount of asthma for
Yeah.
to make that dang video game work.
There really was, if anybody listening has ever played the old Nintendo, the NES, the original 8-bit system, and you had the cartridges, what an inceptive, informative act of faith it was. That's how you built your capacity to believe in God, that you would blow on this cartridge in the hopes that if I do this thing, you really did start to behave like a big leagues pitcher or batter. You'd
Yeah.
have your ritual, like, "No, no, Richie, you stand on 1 foot while I do this thing with the cartridge. Now go pull Julie's hair, and then we'll see if this works." And it worked every time. But yeah, maybe there is like a kind of a similar form of frustration for the era of streaming games in that, a network somewhere is down, but there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Being able to interact with this stupid thing. I have a thing in my hand and it is stupid because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to blow on it. And yeah.
Jake's gonna be on the lookout now for vintage sorry, for retro video games now. Oh, you get some sentimental, angst tied up in this, man.
Yeah, I'm still torn up.
Okay. Number 7, vintage clothing and accessories. Things from the 60s, 70s, and 80s are highly sought after. And not just the clothing themselves, like, you think of, like, the polyester and things like that, but,
Mhm.
the accessories, sunglasses, handbags, jewelry, even the costume jewelry from that era. Those are really sought after. And you and I were doing this in Canton as well. Old band T-shirts. 'Cause those are cool and retro and just, you wear them and it's like, "Man, my cool factor just went up." I'm sure kids out there are going, "No, it didn't, Julie,
Yeah.
whatsoever,"
Well,
but
like just a moment ago, you did a kids these days thing. So no, cool is it not a possibility for you anymore.
I stand by what I said. Vintage clothing is a hot commodity at garage sales. Okay, this one, I would never thought about it, but it does make sense. Antique doorknobs and hardware.
How does that make sense?
Um, People are renovating older homes or they're renovating modern homes and they wanna add some character to it,
Oh, okay.
and doing antique doorknobs and hardware is a easy way to add some character without breaking the bank.
You know, I'm totally not disagreeing with you at all. I just find it like the common theme and with a lot of these things is that hey, you want to get these vintage old things, the actual, genuine article, vintage things to add character. The implication being that our current cultural moment has no character. Our flavor is no flavor.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, so you can get things that look vintage today, they look antique today, but they're, over reproduced. They may not have the craftsman detail to it. Um, a lot of designs today, I'm gonna say are minimalist or modern minimalism, and it is sleek lines and stuff like that, and if that's your style, that's great. But for the antique doorknobs and hardware, they
Mhm.
are really hard to come by. Granted, if you buy some, you might have to, use some elbow grease to clean it up and everything, but, like, on my office door, and you can't really see it, but I have a reproduced old-looking doorknob, and it's this bright emerald green, and it reminds me of the 2nd Wizard of Oz movie. Um,
Oh God, nightmare fuel. I don't
yeah,
need that right now.
and I love that movie, and I don't know why, because I don't like scary movies, but, like, I
Return
have a
to
green
Oz. I remember that.
yeah, I have a green doorknob, and that's kinda what it reminds me of is the Return to Oz. But, finding the antique doorknobs and hardware, if you're gonna do a whole house, if you're gonna especially if you have an old house and you're renovating, to try to get that for the time period, and if you wanna make it all, like, time period appropriate and all that stuff, it can get real expensive
Mhm.
to have those recreated, but if you go to a lot of secondhand sales, they may have them there, and also people don't realize that, they out in the garage, they may have a box full of them and just sitting there getting rusty, collecting dust. You could probably make a lot of money at your sale if you put them out there. If you're not using it, put it out there.
I would recommend it, like, if you've got those, hey, realize you could probably put a higher price tag on them. If you're in the market for those, there's places you can go other than garage sales sometimes. Habitat for Humanity operates something called the Restore,
Mhm.
where you'll find a lot of home materials like Julie just described, available and at a really great price. Much better than trying to buy an old door. You could buy the old hardware that would, you know, more or less do the job of transforming your look the way you want to.
Yeah. All right. Number 9 is vintage magazines and advertisements. So if you think about old magazines and especially those that are maybe have a iconic cover art. So again, you're using it as more of an art piece in a house and not necessarily reading material or anything that has a historical event. So if you have a magazine that was about the, Apollo 13, um, or Reagan's election, any things like that. So those are valuable to collectors. Um, Also, like vintage advertisements. You and I are both in the marketing field. I love looking at vintage advertising because, man, we've come such a long way with understanding buyer personas, understanding um, genders, and what what may actually be misogynistic. Um, but also just how they position certain products in the market. Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
fun to look at that stuff and also the artwork in it because it was all hand drawn. There's no computers at the whenever I'm thinking of vintage advertisements, it's hand drawn and it's beautiful depictions of art. And so, it's very cool for those that collect it.
We have gotten a lot smarter on how exactly to sell cigarettes to children. It used to be that you could just be right up front about it. Hey, this will make you cool as hell. Look at this camel.
I
He's
was
got a
gonna
leather
say,
jacket on.
Joe
He's
Camel
oh,
really
cool.
Joe Camel showed up in my elementary school. He was awesome.
I know. I want to be just like you, Joe Camel.
I think I saw Joe Camel at McDonald's one time. And then the last item on the list is outdated technology. And you may think like, why would you want to buy that? But um, people actually like buying old iPods,
Oh,
early model smartphones. Honestly, my first cell phone I ever had was a Nokia, and I'm pretty sure those things still work today.
the flip phone, right?
No, mine wasn't a flip phone.
Oh, right. It was just like the little brick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also on this list, floppy disk.
Huh.
For whatever reason, people I mean, honestly, not for whatever reason, Oregon Trail is
Mhm.
floppy disk material, and if I could get my hands on a computer that could read a floppy disk and get the floppy disk of Oregon Trail, you wouldn't see me for probably 6 weeks.
I gotta think, maybe the reason behind that category is similar to the others. There's an aesthetic appeal to it. I think I mean, don't you think maybe, like, technology has moved at such a pace that we find something charming, reassuring, just something appealing about like, the idea of something being defunct? Like, if everything's utilitarian and moving so fast and just endless productivity, there's something neat about stasis, and I think that's what people are trying to purchase.
So those are 10 items that if people got them and you have a garage sale, yard sale coming up, put a higher price tag on it, it'll sell.
Cool. Good to know. I've got some way old junk that is perfect for that.
Well, that's this week's episode.
Cool. Thanks, Julie. Talk later. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.